So, today I am joined by David Allan Brown, a seasoned teacher of spirituality, personal empowerment, and intentional living. For more than 3 decades, David has guided individuals, organizations, and communities towards deeper authenticity and conscious leadership. So, his books, teachings, and his newest course, Convergence, he illuminates how spiritual awareness can become a living, breathing practice woven into the rhythm of everyday life. Today, we explore how spiritual insight stops being an abstract concept and becomes a lived experience, simple, grounded, and transformative. So, welcome, David. It's a pleasure to host you.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
So, David, you have spent decades helping people integrate spirituality into their everyday routines. What do you find makes this integration so challenging for many?
Mm, I think that for so many people, the goals that are set initially are, I don't know, it's difficult to explain. People tend to immediately go for a particular thing or an object. They very naturally, because we're human beings who require food and sustenance and money, tend to look at their external circumstances as being a reflection of how spiritual they are. And so right away we tend to dive into, will I get what I want? Will I see the results of my action? Will I be blessed in a certain way by a higher power? And so much of what we do on a human level is based on that. It's based on results. It's based on those that immediate feeling and feedback, that sense of accomplishment and receiving things. And one of the major hurdles to overcome in spiritual integration is the understanding of how much of the co-creation is happening within us, and that it is so much based in what we are receiving and accepting, and then putting back out into the universe from within. And the shift in that perspective from what is happening to me to what am I both making happen and also providing is one that is often very difficult to overcome. I see it so often as the biggest barrier in different reactions. Either the woe is me victim, why is all this happening to me, or the just frustrated striver, which is I'm trying and trying, but I don't seem to be getting what I thought I would get. And so overcoming those mindsets are an important first step.
Definitely. And I think part of the reason is also because human beings, they, like you said, they don't tend to enjoy the process. They just look forward to the consequences. And that is the main thing keeping them apart from spirituality. So, wait.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah. So, and when someone feels disconnected, what's the smallest daily act that can help them begin rebuilding that bridge?
The smallest daily act is gratitude. And being grateful for the smallest thing is the beginning of this. I think that so often in my teaching to so many audiences, we've just done exercise after exercise of how to be grateful for what it is that exists. And often, uh, I speak to executives and people of privilege who have so many things, and they often start with from the same thing we were just talking about, those tangibles, and I have a home, or I have a car or multiple cars, or I have income, etc. And we always go deeper than that, even with folks in that privileged condition. Yes, and they always, and usually I'm very quick order, get to the relationships, the opportunities, the peace, the simplicities of water, of sustenance, of water, of being free of disease, of these very most simple things. And what I find is that when I work with people who are less, I guess we would say, accomplished in a social sense, whether they haven't had the opportunity, or sometimes even when I work with young people, teenagers and younger, and say, what is it that you're grateful for? Well, they so quickly start with those simple things like dogs and cats and play and sunshine and good weather and the simplicity of life and being able to laugh and jokes, and they see their friend across the room and they're able to go there. And even folks who aren't in that situation, who maybe are truly deeply struggling, who need coaching on the most fundamental level of purpose and reason to live. You can always start with the simple gratitudes of thought, of freedom, of of um, of connection. They've come of the choice to even listen to this podcast, for example, the choice to seek help or to look for wonder in the world, the ability to just sit still and watch it all go rushing by. We can always find something, and the simplest place we can start is fine, because any reminder of the power of gratitude is what we're looking for here, so that we can build on that as we move forward.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to start, just being grateful for being here, for being alive, breathing. I think that's a great place to start to, rebuild that bridge. So, moving on, David, your work often highlights the power of intentional awareness. How can someone distinguish between genuine spiritual guidance and the noise of their conditioned inner voices?
What an interesting phrase, the noise of their conditioned inner voices. I think that's very powerful. And I don't know that we have to dive into that. It's so self explanatory. Thank you for bringing it to me. How do we discern the difference is what you asked me. And I think that, first of all, we've already done a service because we offered that phrase. I think that's why it landed for me. Is well, what the first thing we have to do is understand that if we have an internalized conditioned voice that feels like all there is, the first awareness is knowing that there's also something else. Like, it really is just the most powerful awareness that we can have, which is that at no time in any instance, no matter what is happening, there's never just one choice. And I understand that struggle in life and with mental illness, or even just practical illness, or even just practical living, there can seem as if there is only one thing that could ever happen, or is ever happening, or that we're being told, or that we've heard. And the very first step is to understand that that's never true. There's never just one thing. And so, if a if an inkling, an idea, a thought, that voice has come to us, the first thing we can do is simply say, uh, "Can I see this a different way? Is there a different way of looking at this? What else might someone?" And if we're having trouble doing it from within, because sometimes we get stuck, then we can play a game. We can do something simple. We could say, say your best friend's name. Well, how might Matt look at this instead? Or you could make up a fictional character. What would Harry Potter do in this situation? Or you could play something fun like, what does my dog think is happening right now? Just anything that helps us understand that there's more than one perspective. And rather than that being daunting, because, oh, we'd like to be right, we like to think we already know what's going on, it can in fact be inviting, because it says, oh, what else might be out there? So the invitation is not merely to release one thought, it is to open ourselves up to infinite thought. And again, that can be daunting. Oh, there are so many choices. Anything could be true. How would I know where to set? Get back to your question here. And so, how will I know which? If there are so many possibilities, how will I know? And the answer, profoundly in a spiritual conversation such as this, is you will know the one that is based in love. You will know the one that, without question, is for your betterment and for the betterment of others. If there's a question about whether or not that's the case, then you can explore that, and it may not be the purest answer. Now, in our human plane, are we always able to act from this motivation or to accomplish this one thing? Maybe not always. And we can begin to integrate more and more often the understanding that if I'm going to move past any one way of thinking, then let me invite all of the ways of thinking and let me find the ones that are based in love. This is the profundity of spiritual talk, that we're not talking about religion, we're talking about spirituality, and that we're not talking about a specific practice, we're talking about a specific intention. And the intention is one of love. And so that's how we move beyond and begin to sort through the different uh, voices, I guess, that can come to us.
That's a great advice, and like you said, yes, looking at things from different perspectives helps us to overcome these conditioned inner voices, and see, listen beyond that. So that was an amazing advice that you gave. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, David, you have taught in progressive congregations and corporate settings alike. So, what universal spiritual principle do you see resonating across all these different environments?
Mm. I think that what's remarkable to me in let's throw this one in. You said personal and business and faith, and let's talk politics too. What I find is that when I examine people's hearts, however contradictory their actions may be, and and we all have opinions about that. What I find so often is that their intention is to honor the beauty of other people. Their intention is to bring out the very best in others and to provide a loving environment for people to thrive in. Now, that gets messy in a corporation or in our lives when we may disagree on what that loving environment is or what's most important in that environment. Is it profitability or productivity or humanity or relationship? And different organizations will choose different priorities. But what I find is that their intention is that they believe that the priority they choose is the one that will be the most meaningful and impactful for the people that they care about. I experience regularly, and maybe I'm naive, and maybe I'm just surrounding myself with the right people, and maybe I'm ignoring, you know, choosing to see things differently for those who really are far strayed from the path. But what I see, and what I believe that listeners here are looking for, is the answer is: are you seeking the truly caring and compassionate direction for those who you serve? In a congregation or in an organization or in a business or in your community or in any other way. Some folks have lost sight of that. And that's because they're wrapped in the practicals of daily life. When I talk to them in these terms, the way you and I are talking right now, I always see their hearts. I always see their desire. And sometimes they can or do or will change what they're doing, and other times they won't. And that's a bigger question. But what I see as the thread that combines all the things from what you're asking, I do think people truly do want the best for the people that they care about. And that's important. That's an important place to start.
That's so true. And why do you think that a particular principle remains relevant even as the world becomes more complex?
Because in spite of technology trying to evolve faster than we as human beings are capable of utilizing it, and what I mean by that is, in spite of this constant draw to us as as the universe, or as our world, as our culture being something that's macro, something that's so big, something that where one government entity or a handful of very rich people or a certain media culture is dictating so much of what's going on. I just find that to be so utterly false. What I find to be very, very true, and I advise people this all of the time, look to your right and look to your left and look around you. That, in fact, is the world that you live in. And the decisions, the impact, the actions that you take may or may not ever reach your capital, but they will absolutely, profoundly reach the world in which you live. And so they're relevant because that's your scope of impact. And from a spiritual standpoint, it is literally the place that the universe has asked you to make this loving difference. If you were meant to be doing something political, you would be in that realm. If you were meant to be affecting the executive suite, you would be in that place. And if you are, then great, that's your world. And wherever you are, in the grocery store, on the street corner, in your own home, in the local pub where you hang out, this is the space in which your love permeates, in which your intention moves forward, in which, to tie in the last question, in which your con commitment to what is best for the people you care about actually matters and makes a difference. The rest is distraction, and we are so profoundly distracted from what we can accomplish as empowered and beautiful spiritual beings. That's why it's relevant, because the difference we make is right here where we're sitting.
Definitely. And that was a very powerful answer, David. And even I think that even as the world keeps on changing, there are just some things that remains constant. And I think one of them is love, humanity. So definitely, yeah.
Mhm.
So your course, Convergence, teaches people to live intentionally and manifest their goals. What inspired you to create this framework?
Mm. Well, change and difficulty and depression and divorce and moving and children and jobs and life. I what I discovered as I got to a certain age, and there's no number to that. It happens at different places for everyone. Was just that notion of one aspect of my being wasn't enough. And what I mean by that is to live purely with or without emotion was driving me down, or was what I get stuck there. But to be caught up in a second aspect, which is the so much doing and being, and sometimes mindless moving forward without intention, was unfulfilling. And even in times when I thought, oh well, I'll just live in a sort of a pious, sort of a higher spirituality. None of this particularly matters because someday it will all be resolved by someone much, by an energy much greater than mine. That felt hollow as well. And so Convergence is a course which recognizes that we are emotional and intentional instinctual beings living on a plane where action is required in order to survive and to fulfill our purpose in a higher calling, and that the integration of the energy and the larger than us and the profundity of well, God, if that's the word you choose. Energy is one I use sometimes. Higher power is one that many people use as whatever. That when these things are integrated together, then I became a human, a fully actualized, human being in this place, fulfilling my cause and answering the call, and being present, as we were saying, in those spaces, to no longer be absent in my own life, both both in the manifestation of this apartment and where I live and all of the things that outwardly me bring me happy, but most importantly, to be present as a spiritual being whose calling is to bring that love and humanity wherever I am. See how all this ties together? When we recognize that this is where we make the difference and then show up there in a profound way, utilizing all of our tools, then we are answering the call to why we're really here. And this is the awakening part that we're talking about, that and the people are tuning into this podcast for. The awakening is being present with all that you are in order to create a loving humanity in the world in which you live.
Wonderfully explained. It's also compelling to think that manifestation begins from inner regulation rather than any external actions. That's very fascinating. Lastly, David, you've said that spiritual practice is not separate from daily life but embedded within it. What does that look like in your own everyday routine?
Hmm, yeah. It's such a great question because I think that I mean, even I have to remind myself so regularly that the integration is what's vital. And so I mean, one of the things that occurred is I went to a friend's house once, and they are also spiritual teachers and do a lot of classes. And I went in there; their house was just bursting with color everywhere, and there were just signs and reminders and artwork that was spiritually integrated, and Eastern philosophy phrases that were just kind of bursting out of the walls. And I went back to my own home and was like, "Where is any of that here?" No wonder I'm forgetting the core tenets of what I believe. They aren't around me all the time. So one of the most practical and simple things we can do is make certain that our mantras, the ones that you define, listener, that work best for you, are present for you. Now I'm too wimpy to get a tattoo, but I do, have a couple good bracelets, or the red string, or I did go and online and buy some simple just reminders that now hang on my wall, so I can look and say and see the one that says breathe and be here now. I can see my chakra reminders and really touch base with where they are as I walk down a hall, the hallway that I walk down 2 or 3 times a day, if not an hour. I put little notes on my dashboard that remind me to be a loving presence. This requires an input. We have so much input, as I was saying. And so the most practical thing I can invite people to do is make certain that the input that you are receiving is intentional, and that it supports your beliefs, and that it aligns with your values. Other things will come to us, of course. The algorithms are strong on your phone. And when you look up, when you look at your wall, when you look at your wrist, when you look at when you're in your car, when you're at your desk, are there the simple reminders? And then move them every once in a while, because they do blend into the background if we don't again intentionally choose how to put them back into our consciousness each time. It's a practice, and it requires us to be engaged in it. And the lovely billboard that someone else puts there that you'll run into one day to give you a big reminder, that's the lovely thing. And that's once in a while, because the universe wants to thump you on the head. You can take by the by the steering wheel the messages you want to see each day, consistently, ongoing, in order to support what your mission is. And I invite folks to do that.
Amazing. That perspective reframes practice as a presence, a way of being rather than another task on the list. And like you said, everything that we need is already here. So, David, this has been an amazing conversation, and I have learned a lot from this, and I'm sure that the listeners have too. And if they want to connect with you on a deeper level or learn more about your course, how can they do that? Could you share with them?
Yes, I hope they'll find me on my website, davidallanbrown.com, David, Alan, Brown.com. And that's the way to send me an email, find out about my programs, all the things that I do. It's the quickest and easiest way.
Great. So, I'll have all the details on my show listing, and our listeners can connect with you directly.
I hope they will.
I hope so too. So, this conversation reminds us that spiritual practice isn't reserved for sacred spaces or rare moments of clarity. It's something we build into the fabric of daily life through intention, awareness, and honest inner listening. If David's insights resonated with you, take a moment today to pause. Notice and choose your next action with purpose. Even the smallest act of presence can reshape the entire day.